Hello and welcome to Digital Futures session, Metaverse and Architecture. Today we are joined by some really great speakers, and I'm extremely excited for them to be here and thankful for them to be here. Today's topic, Metaverse and Architecture, is divided into two broad segments. One is we want to take this opportunity to also present some of the workshop outcomes from Digital Futures 2022 Summer Festival, as well as to start a discussion and start a series of conversation on what it means to build in the metaverse environment. So I'm not going to take too much of time of the speakers, but we're going to have a quick round of presentation from all the speakers and then followed by a panel discussion. So requesting the audience to please stay tuned for the panel discussion, which will host a lot of conversation. And Matheus Stancati over here would be moderating the session along with Gustavo Rincon from Digital Futures team. Good luck to all the presenters. Let me begin by introducing our first presenter, Provides NG. Provides trained as an architect, researcher, studies the emergence of digital tools, their impacts and application within the urban context. She is a lecturer at Bartlett School of Architecture, UCL, and managing editor at MATL cover of the Bartlett Prospective Journal. She is currently pursuing her PhD at Chinese University of Hong Kong. Her PhD research, Collaborative Intelligence, Rethinking Blockchain, received the Best Presentation Award by Sigradi 2021. Provides also co-founded two research collective, Rational Energy Architects, and current experimenting with AI and XR technology. They have taught and exhibited worldwide at Qiutong conference, Mata Deor Media Lab, Madrid, and EPF, Deep City. Provide, we're happy to have you, and let's begin the conversation.
Hi, thank you so much for the invitation. And yeah, happy to be here again. And congratulations to Digital Future Workshops and all of the amazing output. So today I'll be presenting a bit of the current work that I've been doing in the fields. And the title is Collaborative Intelligence, Digital and Participatory. So there seems to be an assortment of words that tries to bridge the physical and the digital that arises in recent decades, let's say. And nowadays, more commonly, we have Metaverse. So the question that I'm really concerned about is what can be the social economic value of immersive Metaverse technologies within design, production, and practice of architecture. And the goal for me is to have new means to participatory planning driven by collaborative digital tools, looking at architecture and planning as information production and information consensus. So information production is basically in the virtual space, we first create information. And an information consensus is when all of the possibilities collapse into physical reality and then design is manufactured. So what exactly is participatory design? Well, basically, it aims to involve different stakeholders within the whole design and development process, so then the outcome can meet the goals and needs of the end users. And there can be various levels of engagement, including consultation, all the way to code creation. And this is what I'll talk about today with a few case studies. And it's also when the participatory meets with the digital. I'll quickly show 3 examples that has different level of engagement. First example surrounds the topic of visualizing future vision in 3D. And it utilized the backcasting, which is a planning method that first identify an ideal future vision and then cast the steps backwards so then we know how to actually proceed to this ideal future from the present. It's not exactly that fancy. I mean, 2050 net zero emission, and all the other examples that probably everyone have heard of. But then the problem is actually how do we communicate massive amount of information in not just an effective manner, but also effective manner. So then we can really bootstrap that engagement, not just within expertise, but also to the public as well. So volumetric cinema is kind of like something that the current team have been doing since 2019. We've also spoke about it last time. So this time I wanted to talk more about the back end of the ideas. So that was our signature director cut. You can watch the full video on YouTube. But basically the point is that when we create, this fancy cinema, this used to be the size of the crew and the chain of command. It's not easily accessible and achievable by individuals, right? You need massive upfront capital, you need investment, but today the scene is a bit different because of the technologies we have. So now this is the core crew, which is 4 people. And usually we do rapid charrettes that actually make films in teams of 4 within 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah, so this requires the collaborative intelligence of humans and machines. And what we use AI for instance, we ask them questions, we train them on philosopher books, we try to harness, narrative writing and screenwriting, which used to take, I don't know, a team of people to actually do it, but now AI can do it on its own, which is a little help. Also creating avatar. We don't need any more physical actors. We can just take a picture, one single image, and then generate the entire avatar. Reconstruct scenes. I mean, nowadays, AI don't really see so well in 3D yet because adding a z-axis is basically exponentially more information for it to process, but then we've been trying to do it, to combine it with traditional photogrammetry tools. And also, the most amazing thing is that we can have very organic and natural movement just by taking videos of us dancing, and then the AI is able to abstract the movement and map it in a rigged avatar model. And of course, we've been doing workshops all over the world, free and open to all. We don't wish to say that, well, we can master the skills. We want to be able to prove that actually people, by mixing together experts and maybe more amateurs, they can also produce volumetric cinema together so then they can express the future vision of cities. So just one example done by Carlos, Evgenia, and Daniel. They were looking specifically at attention economy. I picked this example because today the topic is metaverse, but I also show it a lot because it's such a cool output. And then they were a team of 3 in 2 weekends, and then they were able to do this. They've never met each other before. The entire workshop was in virtual space, and it's amazing that, they're meeting people from all around the world, and now they're able to run the Ola research. And I've always admired how they've been able to, just work together globally. You can also see this on the Instagram and on the current YouTube channel as well. Cool. So the second case study is Roundtable 3D. I think in the past 2 years, I've been in, I don't know, more than 20, 30 conferences, and it's amazing and privileged to actually be able to do this because in the old times, every conference means flight tickets, accommodation, and we're just very humble researchers, right? So this is examples of 2 amazing phygital setup of conferences. It looks like the future is here. But then I thought, if the marginal cost of actually producing conference in the virtual space is getting near 0, it means that we can just produce infinitely many this sort of academic roundtables, just like what Digital Future is doing. So I collaborated with one of my colleagues at UCL, Alberto Fernandez, and then we wanted to see if photometric experiences may actually help with communication academically. So this is sort of like a 1-minute show view. Almost. I think we invited more than 20 institutions, software startups, businesses, architecture firms to actually come together. We even invited guys from Mozilla Hubs to actually engineer and develop this VR platforms. And then all we have to do is basically put our models in and then customize. More questions from us, or else we'll move on to the next. So more than 40 speakers, and then we customized all the VR space for each channel, each of their individual contents. And the most amazing thing is that Mozilla Hubs is now web-based, meaning any individual, without having to invest immense amount of cost or asset, can also participate. And digital inclusivity is something that we hear a lot. Yeah, so you can also see the full roundtable on YouTube as well. And the last case study is basically, well, how to actually pull all these resources together so we can actually co-create with citizens, people who are not trained professionally, to be able to actually tell us what they want in three-dimensionally. So this is also something that goes along procedural rhetoric, which is sort of like a theory proposed by Ian Bogost to talk about, well, actually, it's not just narrative persuasion. It's not just cinematic persuasion. Procedural persuasion is the art of persuasion by rule-based representations and interactions rather than using verbal, spoken, or written words. And it really focuses on how game makers craft laws and rules within a game to convey a particular ideology. So this is an ongoing work right now, and we've taken it to the context of Hong Kong, which is pretty challenging because if you know, in Europe, one housing project, maybe 20 to 50 units of households. In Hong Kong, easily gets to 500 households. This particular housing estates that we're doing, it has 9,000 residents. So one of the most important questions in Metaverse is how scalable is it actually within the virtual space, network loads, real-time interaction, 3D objects, how much can we optimize? And even without the virtual space, every participatory design has limitations because one room holds 20 people. If you want to get 1,000 people in the same room to talk about the past, present, and future of a housing estates, that's still very challenging. So now Hong Kong has an aging society, and the goal is really to get them to be an active aging society. And according to contact theory, the best intergenerational active aging is by direct contact. But contact of what? And this is why we thought gaming could be cool. So a lot of teenagers are also interested in gaming. How can we actually help them to find a future, a career through their habits? That's also a key of how do we bootstrap community engagement. Another thing is that currently Hong Kong has a housing crisis. So what we do is that we are engineering a lot of projects around the city using modular integrated construction. It's like this discrete thinking within architecture. So every module is prefabricated somewhere else. We ship it here, we stack them up, including the famous quarantine. It's also built within a week or two or a month or two using the MIC. And that's how we were able to also control. Last year, we had almost 0 cases for 1 year. So I think that was pretty amazing. So MIC in physical reality actually matches with voxels in virtual reality, something that we're not too strange with. And this is how the game is looking like right now. And we're at the same time constrained and enabled by participant abilities to actually design. So we have to provide them with very, very basic modular units. At the same time, how can we show their creativity within this virtual space? How do we actually mass customize? Because it doesn't matter how many times we play this game, the outcome look exactly the same because the designer designed a game, right? So we thought one of the most signature thing in Hong Kong is shop sign. Everybody must customize their shop sign to attract attention, right? It's attention economy. So then what we do is that we have this game process. I played it with my mom. We tried it at work. My mom just drew out all the shop signs, take a picture, upload it, and then move it to the shops. And then now you begin to see that, it's more lively. It shows that people have been inside the space and they're participating. And so the whole process is not just about play, it's the process engineering of the play day. We have to ensure that they're learning beforehand, so then we educate them of the information that they need, we play, and most importantly, we need the community review. And a last thing that I want to keep your attention to is intangible incentives. So we're also utilizing blockchain within the project, and the goal is proof of work, proof of contribution. Second is trace and track. Like for instance, if you do a city scale participatory design, how do we make sure that contributed information actually doesn't end up in someone's trash can, right? It might end up in someone's trash can, we never know. And also proof of contribution is actually for the user. So proof of work is for the designer, proof of contribution is for the users, that the NFT certificate actually certify and authenticate that they have participated in skill sharing. But obviously, more technical question is what data to be mined on chain and capacity. Right now, a lot of people are just taking 2D images, but if we're doing 3-dimensional game, is it possible that we run the game data in real time on chain? What does the certificate actually look like? I mean, it's just a hash code. At the same time, we need to connect it to a user wallet. We're generating fungible or non-fungible tokens. A kind of implementation that we're looking for, with proof of contribution. The user should be able to go back to the content that they created anytime they want, right? That's the transparency and immutability. Are we doing Web 2 or Web 3 implementation? For instance, how do we actually visualize data mine on chain, pull them off into end browser, and then once the user send a query, they'll be able to retrieve the information that they need fast enough in a scalable manner. Just to get the size of the problem, Visa and MasterCard, the credit cards, they're able to process 50,000 transactions worldwide per second. But the fastest chain right now is around 2,000 transactions per second. So that's like exponentially less than what we need, right? And the last thing is that to have the game data to be mined on chain in real time is if the user negotiation process can be documented in real time, it can benefit in a way that conflicting values and how they come to consensus, how such processes may be facilitated, what is the role of the designer within a negotiation, they can all be mined immutably. And it can also be applied to other kinds of negotiation processes. For instance, proof of work in blockchain is also a negotiation processes. So finally, a few takeaway. The hype words all in one slide. MetaNet, for me, it's not really about blockchain, it's block plus chain. So we need discretization of data parcel for continuous exchange. This is sort of like a safety mechanism. For instance, if we're running the game data on chain in real time, if there are packs and parcel, this means that if there's a corruption in the data, we can immediately stop. It's sort of like, Houdini. Why is it so much better than Rhinos? Because Houdini, you can just press escape and everything just pauses and you're not crashing, right? That's discrete data parcel. Metaverse for me, it's actually not really about the 3D stuff. It's more about social economy. So meta is the social part. The verse is actually the economy. So the exchange of value. So we're creating data and attention value. And for interaction, we're able to exchange. And 3D environments, that's exponentially more information, like which corner actually attracts the most attention. How do we trigger user to actually navigate at this particular spot and information that we want them to receive. Omniverse for me is the copyright and the copyleft. Right now, they're synthesizing proprietary and open source information economy, enterprise grade. But most importantly, no matter if it's current or rear, one thing that we really want participants to think about is as individuals, how do we actually bridge between different software interfaces? We're not engineering AI, we're architects. So what are we actually contributing to the field, right? Yeah, so this is the conclusion. Blockchain as a form of collaboration, artificial intelligence, but also a collaboration of human intelligence. And digital, for me, I think is the future of architecture. Yeah, I hope I'm right on time. So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Provides. I think this really sets a good tone for today's session as well. Thank you for joining. Okay, our next presenter is BEGÜM. BEGÜM AYDINOGLU is an award-winning architect, computational designer, urbanist, and academic, uniting cross-disciplinary collaboration to enhance cutting-edge relationship between art, design, architecture, engineering, and virtual reality. She received her postgraduate architecture and urbanism from AADRL. Under the studio of Sajay Bhushan, she focused on the contemporary use of robotics in architecture and construction, as well as new ways of living, such as co-living in high-performance cities. Begum is leading Sensory as the creative director and received multiple awards such as Reba Trophy for Booby Forest Eco Living and Hyperloop Desert Campus Finalist Award. She's also co-founder of Illuser, world's first design-oriented metaverse. She'll be also joined by one of Digital Futures team member and also a graduate intern at Sensory, Zeynep. Zeynep Bosque is the regional manager for Digital Futures Turkey channel. And along with her, we have the co-instructor for Liquid Architecture in Metaverse, Pedro, who is joining us from Lima, Peru, who's currently finishing his MSc Computational and Architecture and Advanced Design at Design Morphine program. Welcome, Begüm, Zeynep, and Pedro. The screen is all yours. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank to Digital Futures team to really managing this amazing workshop that is setting the boundaries and all the conversations around the metaverse and architecture relationship between us designers and how we are shaping the future all together. Also, I would like to thank Provides for her amazing, inspiring lecture. So firstly, I would like to explain a bit about what we do in the Sensory for the built environment and how, as Illuser, we are combining all of these experiences as trained architects to construct the future of our profession, and also how we are able to design the socio-economical aspects of the metaverse. And also together with Pedro, we will be concluding our presentation by explaining how the workshop outcome was and the projects that we have been envisioning. So we can continue to the presentation. The Sensory as a concept studio is a studio that doesn't only focuses on architecture. It's a concept house that is able to deliver any kind of creative idea from concept to project by embracing algorithmic design thinking through the journey of creation. So we really believe the thinking methodology between the algorithmic design and applying it to our projects from the day one. And Sensory is an ecosystem that creates, inspires, and aspires. For us, the multi-scale aspect of all the design projects is very important. For us, a geometry can find its presence in an urban scale, but also in a graphic design scale. So thinking in that multi-scale aspect is really what keeps our minds as designers free and also inspired. And as Sensory, we believe in uplifting quality through sensuous design and algorithmic thinking. We believe human sensories should be the priority that we keep in the design process, because the 5 human sensories that we trigger as designers is what creates all the experience. And in Metaverse, it's still very important. It's still very relevant, and we shouldn't be forgetting about this. The human sensories are what we are creating our curated experiences around all the 3-dimensional storytelling. And within Sensory, we have 3 different divisions. Sensory Studio is acting as a branding studio. Sensory Atelier is our architecture arm, and Sensory Farm is focusing on 3D printing and product design together with manufacturing. And we have been doing projects all around the world as Sensory. And what we are very interested is to really explore the complex geometries and their relationship with the context. This is one of the examples of our projects that we recently won a RIBA award from Royal Institute of British Architects. And this project, for example, it's for the built environment that is questioning the real relationship between nature, but not only about formal language, but also about how we are really integrating For example, if we are abstracting a mountain and adapting it to the geometrical language that we are doing, how would we able to do? And again, not to forget about the human sensories in the design process. This is another project that we have did. Actually, it was a collaborative project between Mariana Custodio dos Santos. I'm sure most of you know Mariana as Digital Futures team as well, and Juan Carlos Naranjo, founder of Lab Architects, and me as Sensory. Together with this project, Hyperloop as a concept is a concept that is initiated by Elon Musk, and it's a project in the middle of the desert in Nevada that is a sanctuary of science, that is also technology, science, museum, multifunctional. So for example, in this project, we are questioning the multiple functions coming together to create a complex that doesn't have a beginning or end. So the whole building is constructed as a loop that is also flexible in the way in the future, if there will be any other additions, it could grow and get integrations. And another project example is Taxon. It's a 3D printed built project of us that is almost 4 meter tall exoskeleton installation that we have done in Istanbul, exhibited for 2 years in Zorlu Center, that we are questioning the relationship between the production, structural elements, and art, and also new ways of design expressions. And together with Sensory, I'm also co-founder and COO of Ilizor, which is the world's first design-oriented metaverse platform. Together with Ilizor, we are working with brands, public figures, corporations, governments, to really create and curate the metaverse experiences that is focusing on design aspect of it. So as the designer mindset, how are we really shaping the metaverse future? And it's a collaborative act. So for that, we are also working with other artists, designers, to make the metaverse that is also addressing the needs of the human sensories together with the technological advancements. For us, a meta architect is a designer, builder, developer of metaverse experiences in the most easy way to express. And together with Ilizor, we are creating experiences, events, education programs, NFT projects, creating spaces, custom spaces for brands, but also we are creating a community that is able to learn and grow together. One of the examples of our recent projects is the TRT Metaverse project. That is the Turkey radio television agency, a media company that is focusing on to
You're on mute.
Okay, now, yes, we can continue. Another project of ours is Optiverse, which is again a project that is for a corporate client that includes different functionalities such as the meeting rooms, auditoriums. And what we're exploring together with Ilizor is that relationship between a brand, a corporate identity, and its architecture to be experienced in the virtual environment that doesn't only serve for the communities, but also who are experiencing that brand, that company as the employees as well. So there are multiple aspects of the design that needs to be tackled in this project. Yeah, together with the Digital Futures, we had an amazing workshop together with myself as the creator and curator of this program of Sensory Digital Futures, together with Pedro Venegas Rodriguez and Aman Sasan. We had amazing times to create projects with Digital Futures students, and maybe Pedro can explain this part to be more interactive.
Yeah, hello, thank you so much for the invitation. So for our workshop, what we basically wanted to do is was not to replicate whatever is happening in the physical world. You know, by default, when we think about metaverse, for some reason, we expect that whatever is happening in the digital world is the same as the physical world. So we were trying not to do that. So we start thinking more philosophically in that way. That's why our workshop was based more from the idea, from the perspective of Marcos Novak about what he used to call cyberspace. So what we try to explore there is different ways to perceive the digital world in different scales, from the smallest human scale to the biggest city or universal scale. That's why our final pictures are completely different. So we explore textures, we explore human beings, we explore animals, we explore spaces, because all of them are relevant for metaverse, you know? So that's basically what we try to do there. Yeah. I think we have a video for the output, I think. Yeah, those are some of our outputs. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you so much, BEGÜM. I think you've already got a really overwhelming response in the chat as well. Thank you, Pedro, for joining in, and thank you, Zeynep.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Okay, moving forward, our next presenter is Matheus Stancati. He is one of the co-founders of Sunken Blip, an interdisciplinary design studio based in Miami, with the focus on designing for virtual worlds, technology in fabrication, and community-based projects. Matheus received his master's in architecture in 2021 from Florida International University, and has taught lectures and workshops in platforms such as DigitalFUTURES, ANFA, and REBA, and so on. Matheus also helped create Dive Live's virtual presentation on Sunken Blip stage, inviting speakers from all over the world to share their work and philosophy of life through metaverse spaces. Matheus, the screen is all yours, and good luck.
All right. Thank you very much for the introduction. And hello, everyone. Good morning, Digital Futures. Very excited to be here. So thank you for the invitation. And I'm going to do a quick showcase of a couple of things, and I decided to name the presentation or the showcase Inhabiting the Metaverse. But one thing that, it's a conversation that comes over and over again is the word metaverse being this weird word right now. So for the purpose of this, even though it's the name of the presentation, we're going to kind of scratch that with the idea that we're talking about a virtual realm or some sort of, a simulation, that provides social and monetary, interactions, mimicking the real world, but exploring different possibilities within this virtual realm. And then for this presentation, I'm actually going to talk about three different things. One, how we started with these virtual realms. Two, some experiments and research in bridging these different realities. And then the third thing, which is one of the most exciting for me, which is actually inhabiting these virtual realms, right? One thing is designing for the virtual space, but also, you know, using it, utilizing it over and over again. You start realizing some patterns, realizing some other needs within this new exciting environment. And how we got started, it's actually, you know, Pedro was mentioning, you know, this idea of, since we have a different space to explore, not copying the real world, but how we started was actually mimicking the real world and exploring how we perceive reality in the way we were designed to, right? And with the idea of how we visually perceive the world, that's one of the topics that got a lot of attention in the beginning. The idea that we see the world in 2D, right? And you know, the light bounces on objects and our eyes process that, converts into electrical signals processed by the thalamus, you know, primary visual cortex, all of this, you know, cognitive science. And the exciting thing is that our brain is constantly sending information back and forth, basically predicting what we're seeing, right? So in a way, what we make sense of the world is already a simulation. It's a creation by our own brain based on what we know, what we've seen before, our preconceived ideas. So this very first try was actually trying to externalize this way of visualizing the world. So since we see the world in frames and then we process that in 3D, with the process of photogrammetry, we can then recreate a point cloud or this digital twin of what we would be perceiving with our own biological tools. So then when comparing to other views, right, other, let's say, experiences, this is a shot going down south of Biscayne Boulevard in downtown Miami. And this is another scene, right? This is not in the apartment or a specific space. It's looking at the corner of Zaha's 1000 Museum building. And one thing that was exciting is, what if we could, you know, if we process the frames as well, we get another photogrammetry. But what if we could align both, right? I'm in the apartment, but also I'm looking at Zaha's building as a way of, if you were perceiving both spaces at the same time. And through this process, we can then augment the space perception done by photogrammetry to understand both of those worlds together. And that was the first time that we realized that once you digitalize a space, you can then manipulate it, right? And the potential of manipulating a space and then perceiving it again and doing this feedback loop of, you know, externalizing our brain's capacity to understand the world around us. And then this raised questions, all right, how can we then manipulate this, or like train a space to learn and interpret new rules? And this here is a picture of bismuth crystals. And we chose this bismuth crystal as a way of training new perceptions, because it, in a way, it has its own set of rules. So through a couple of models training cyclogans, you know, with train A, train B, we were able to, you know, train a little bit to understand the rules of what it makes a bismuth crystal, and then process all of those frames that were used to reconstruct the digital version of the room with this new set of tools. And the result is then a new interpretation of the space that was reconstructed by the eyes of a model that was trained only by bismuth crystals. So now we're able to externalize this potential perception with a new set of tools. And then moving this forward, you know, with the idea of creating, you know, roles that don't really exist. In this case, this is using a text to image tool. This is before Midjourney. This is how old this is, you know. But this is a set of images showcasing a build made of gold, right? That was the prompt. And then it generated thousands of examples of what a building made of gold is. And then just like the crystals, we trained all of those frames to understand what the room would be when perceived by a model that only has been trained on buildings made of gold. And then again, the reconstruction is biased by what it's learned. And now we're able to reconstruct all of these different versions of the same physical space. And then through all of these other models, you know, many other tests, which I don't have time to show here, the result of this first experimentation was then this network or landscape of different realities that are trained now by different data sets and different perspective eyes, you know, trained on specific different rules and things. And then the second part that I wanted to bring forward is the idea of bridging realities, right? That's another set of or branch of research which deals also with the physical world as well as the physical and the digital world. This is showing a model that has a set of virtual textures in a way that we can mimic the effects of lighting in the physical space. but then showing the potential of applying digital materials to physical objects.
We are so tied up in our minds that we've lost our senses. Time to wake up. What is reality? Obviously, no one can say, because it isn't words. It isn't material, that's just an idea. It isn't spiritual. That's also an idea, a symbol. Reality is this.
So that was a video of a digital skylight projected on a flat roof, but using the person's perspective to actually manipulate perspective and, well, the person's position in a room to manipulate perspective so it feels like it's a skylight or there's an addition to the physical space. And that's one of the points of bridging the two realities, how we can then overlap and align different realities so you can still experience the real world and the digital as one. And this one showcases, we're using virtual reality, aligning both, virtual and physical reality. In this case, also with the tool of aligning both, you're able to perceive one thing and experience the other. And what that allows, especially in this case, is for you to implement digital worlds into the physical. And in this case, different than virtual reality, the ability of adding those windows or openings into virtual realms, it allows for two things. One, you can externalize, all of these experimentations with modifying what the physical space is through digital. But second, in this case, these are all external tools to the body. There's no wearables in this scenario. There are sensors that track your body from a specific location and screens or projectors that work. So you can be completely naked, right? And experience this virtual space within the physical that are not attached to your body, but it's part of the space itself. And this, some behind the scenes, how it's in real time tracking users' position and then projecting this perceived perspective to make it seem like it's an actual space. And that's just me making a fool out of myself. And this works as well for skylights, the idea that you can walk around and feel like the hole in the ceiling is actually a three-dimensional space, thus making this opening into the virtual realm, isolating the physical space, almost like if it was a spaceship floating through this quote unquote metaverse. And just to reiterate, this is a flat ceiling, but the perspective follows the person's eye. And this goes into physical objects as well, the ability of transforming different characteristics of an object through the digital version, but then adapting it to the physical. So in this case, it's changing the lighting during the day on the virtual model, and then the physical model is in real time updating that, simulating all the lighting, etc. And this took many other forms, as well as the experimentation with materials and applying these different qualities to the physical objects. And then the third thing and last, before I run out of time and you guys kick me out, is inhabiting these virtual spaces. This is also me making a fool out of myself, but since we started doing these experimentations and the whole research portion of Zhang and BiliBili, we then wanted to have a community and house this community within a virtual space that we can share knowledge and collaborate. So this feeling of creating a space where we can focus all of this research, started reiterating different versions of a project to create this stage or some sort of venue, which eventually came up to be the Zhang and BiliBili stage, which some people here have been there. I recognize some names, but in the end, this is a one surface folded into itself to create a venue where the community can come together and share knowledge, right? In the center stage, as well as the audience, it's all part of the same surface with the idea that anyone can take the stage at any point. And for almost 5 months now, we have been hosting weekly events and actually using a space. And that's where we found the difference between designing for Metaverse or designing for virtual spaces and actually using it on a weekly basis. Realizing the needs of a community or the needs of an audience, and then altering or modifying the space for it. And that's the beauty of a virtual space in that sense, that instead of a physical stage that once you build it, it's really complicated to modify it. If you realize that people have a really hard time looking at the stage from an actual audience seat, it's hard to go through a whole remodeling. But in the virtual space, you can use that data to constantly reiterate and measure metrics, etc. So far, we had more than 20 people presenting on stage, some people that are here, even Neil Leach, who's here with us. And these are just some examples, as well as last week we had George Guida that is also here with us. And all of these presentations have the same idea, right? Bringing to the virtual space someone, take over the space to then showcase their work, their philosophy of life, and utilizing the tools that are allowed in this sort of environment, which are 3D models, floating screens and sounds, videos, etc. And another thing that we have been doing is virtual lectures for medical themes. So these two doctors, Dr. James Gathas and Dr. Amar, have taken the stage 2 times a week to actually talk to medical audiences, showcase very complex procedures that are usually done on PowerPoint or Zoom, which try to flatten, what a knee is or what a spinal cord is. And now they're able to showcase with 3D models and needles and all, and, expand this knowledge gap in medicine that requires 3D attention. And then one thing that is currently going on right now is the Creative AI series. So we are having on stage all of these discussions about creativity and artificial intelligence. Last week, this week, like I mentioned, George Guida presented. Next week, we have Carlos Navarro, and then Neil Leach is going to come back to the stage. So yeah, this is something that has been going on, and we are understanding the needs of the space. And then one thing that I'd like to point out is the potential of, within this type of environment, collecting actual data of user experience, users' positions, the mean time on a space. So far, we had over 3,000 people in the stage since we started doing these lectures. So this amount of data can really showcase and pinpoint how geometry makes someone understand or not a presentation, or how we can optimize and really isolate certain variables so then we can really measure. And this is actually an invitation for anyone that is watching this. If you're interested in this type of research, we're starting now to collect all of this data and work out a research paper or something that regards to collecting metrics on the same space, only changing a couple of variables. So if you're interested in participating in something like this and collaborating, making this into a scientific research, let us know. And that's what I collected so far. I hope I'm good on time. And if you guys are interested in learning more and having this conversation forward, join us on Discord and we can talk for it.
Thank you so much, Matheus, and amazing work. And I wish you good luck for the Dive Live Space lectures. If the audience wants to look more into it, maybe we can just drop a link in the YouTube chat. Moving forward, our 4th presenter today is Ola Research Group, and we are joined by Giovanna Daniel and Jennifer Durant from Ola Research Lab, which is an architectural design practice merging spatial thinking and contemporary technologies to deliver unique experiences. They seek to discover opportunities from research and pragmatic analysis. The development of concepts triggers the creation of forms that respond to an era. So Ola establishes a base that opens the field for the emergence of new architectural languages and new perceptions between the space and its inhabitants. Ola has experience in different areas of content creation, such as concept development, architectural design, research, motion graphics, virtual reality, augmented reality, machine learning, and 3D modeling. Good luck, guys, and the screen is all yours.
Hey, good morning. Well, let's start the presentation. Hi, good morning. Thank you for having us here today. We are Ola Research. It stands for Online Life of Architecture, and we're going to talk about our experience working with immersive environments. The team is international and it's made up of architects Jennifer Durant, Daniel Escobar, Claudia Garcia, Giovanna Pillaca, and Jose Luis Ventimiglia. We work remotely from different countries. The Ola experience has been divided in 3 chapters. The beginning, exploration in the metaverse and blockchain. At the same time, we have developed workshops, exhibitions, and publications about multimodal AI generation, AR, VR, and experience in the metaverse. We have been involved in different workshops. This is the project continuing. The output of our students from our workshop Memory and Perception in Digital Architecture, we taught at Digital Futures last year in 2021. Basically, we study how the users interact with the internet, and in our studies, we reflect that more than 59% of the world use the internet and generate data without being aware of it. As architects, we thought the importance to create different ways of interaction and communication between the users, and this leads us to explore the immersive environments. Metaverse experience require different components to generate a user experience. First, we consider sensations to generate exciting spaces. Then we have into account environmental sounds, navigation, interaction in order to create a playful experience. Thus, creating our own set of rules, modifying the materiality, gravity, and designing interactive objects, all of this to give users a better immersive experience. There are also technological limitations in immersive environments. This includes the restriction of the geometry polycount, the resolution of textures, the interoperability between the platforms, the accessibility and upload time. Our design process has been synthesized in 5 steps. It always starts with a concept, following we have an artificial intelligence process, then a computational design process. After that, we create an architectural record, and finally, we have the virtual experience. To achieve the results that we want, we believe in the interoperability of different softwares and tools, and we use depend on the concept that we want to develop.
Chapter 1, called The Beginning, starts with ACACOR, that was designed for a futurely workshop where, as a team, we met back in 2020. ACACOR is an underwater entity lost in space. It attracts other planets composing its own planetary system. Nowadays, it feeds on a porous planet made of ice, being in a total state of equilibrium. This aquatic entity is a multi-layer system who was created by an aggregation of different organic elements. Water is one of the most important elements in order for life to happen and to be sustained. In all cultures, water has a prevalent position both in scientific and religious fields. This duality of physical and spiritual link between humans and water gives to our project the ground to explore an architecture that can account for both sides of the connection. And for this project, it was the starting point. The movement inside ACACOR is carried out primarily by connection spaces, such as platforms, ramps, and walkways. To introduce the user to the experience of an organic aquatic environment that is also immersive, we proceed with exploration of movement, sounds, lighting, and dynamic textures that provoke otherworldly sensations and interactions between the user and the virtual entity. Our research question was, how can narrative influence design constraints that leads to an otherworldly experience in a virtual environment? We developed different bio-inspired prototypes and iterations, taking into account the geometry optimization for uploading it to a virtual immersive environment. And here you can see the results of that. A big part of trying to upload something into the metaverse was the choice of textures and their mapping, as they would be experienced in one-to-one scale. Multiple material maps were customized, such as albedo, the roughness, normals, emissivity, and metalness. Here you can see a small part of that gallery of colors and textures that we use in the project to complement the atmosphere. We also design interactive elements like the elevators and teleporters that expand the ability to travel from one specific location to another. And we design other objects which are meant to be used to enjoy the experience. These are the throwable objects. Also, the VR software allows us to add some new physics dynamics to enrich the tools to the users inside the entity. The gravity and the navigation through Agacore were designed in a way that the low gravity, similar to Moon's gravity, allowed to the user to experiment the weightlessness. The creation of elements such as drones allow the teleportation through the different planets, which increase the sensation of inhabiting an isolated planet. Additionally, the VR software lets users to experience an interactive social environment because there can be several users connected in our entity at the same time.
In chapter 2, the exploration, we present the project Power Data. In the second project, we use real data for creating a virtual building, which turns out to be an immersive experience. The recent acceleration into virtual worlds, including social media and telecommunication platforms, have allowed us to engage in new ways. We're constantly generating a digital footprint, sometimes we're not even aware of. So our research question for this project was, is it possible to make a virtual immersive architectural experience with data extracted from social media to create awareness about your digital footprint? The building typology was developed to be similar like a museum that contains exhibitions that explains its own creation, as well as the data analysis through a multisensorial experience. For a human being, the center of all processing is the brain, so we use this as an inspiration to locate an artificial intelligent brain that would drive the internal processing of the building itself. Our concept was based on speculation of what it means to have access to all our data and be able to see the processes that categorize and classify our virtual self. How does our physical self interface with the virtual persona we live online? And who is responsible for all this data management? Do we leave it up to algorithms to predict our behavior and influence us? Our design process consisted of multiple sketches and iterations with the data and machine learning outputs that push us forward. In this manner, we collaborated with the AI as both an agent and a tool of design. We use machine learning algorithms for data processing analysis and 3D generation, including computer vision deep learning algorithms and multimodal text image, such as BEGÜM plus CLIP. It allows us to experiment and prototype rapidly based on a set of curated data. A combination of bio-inspired algorithms alongside AI was used to generate a logic for the structure of the building. The Power Data has analyzed more than 35,000 images, 110,000 comments, more than 1 million likes, analyzed in 34 Instagram profiles, and a total of 1,464 hours of training data. 5 sculptures were developed based on the 5 states that were represented by the mind curated profiles, which include the mental, the physical, emotional, and spiritual and social. And they are a way to represent or to categorize our digital personas and how algorithm might see us when we upload images to social media. The experience we created has an estimated tour of an hour. The project offers the possibility of the user to go through at their own pace, following the circulation of ramps, teleporters, and elevators. And also here you can see some interactivity in like the VR environment. And this was an immersive experience that was developed for laptops, PCs, and virtual reality headsets. It was developed on the Sansar platform, which is a social platform that also has virtual reality and can be accessed through the web.
In the chapter 3, the Metaverse and Blockchain, we present the project Symbiosis of Digital Life. Symbiosis of digital life refers to the first cells that make possible the beginning of life. As a concept, we talk to revert of a new experience of art called NFTs. The symbiosis of digital and real life make possible spaces for debate, criticism, and observation of digital art that converge on the proposed planet. When we enter to the blockchain ecosystem, we realize that we can connect to a marketplace, use artifacts, have interaction, and develop our own navigation system. The research question for this project was, can we create an NFT gallery as an out of this world experience? The metaverse world is developing really quickly. For example, in this picture, you can see how the quality of the metaverse was 1 year later. Was 1 year before. And 1 year later, you can see in these graphics that the quality of yes. In this video, you can see the graphics quality and how it improved when investments in this space that is modern. And finally, you can see the type of other world space that we create, where an atmosphere is created based on textures, geometries, and lines. Like our conclusions, the metaverse is still underdeveloped, and it opens a lot of possibilities to use of new technologies. It changes how we interact, store our memories, connect to a digital world, and create new sensations and inverse experience. We ask how will AI play a role in generating new environments and content generation? Will we face the problem we currently have in social media with bots? And how will this push our technological structure? The space is still waiting to be built, so let's build it together. Thank you for your attention, and this is our last video that we are asking about the future of the neural networks.
Okay, amazing work, Giovanna, Daniel, Jennifer, and Jose. It's always a delight to see the work of Ola Research Group. Please stay tuned for the panel discussion at the end of the session. And moving forward, our next presenter is currently working at FU Virtual Center Director at Fab Union. She's also leading research in product planning and metaverse direction. Qiutong Zhang has completed her master's degree in at MSD from Melbourne School of Design, University of Melbourne. She investigates in how parametric design and robotic fabrication can shape urban futures. She was the curator of DigitalFUTURES 2022 Summer Workshop Metaverse Exhibition and workshop instructor of Fab Union Metaverse Workshop. She was involved in professional projects exhibited at Machine Made Digital Aura at West Bund and Shanghai Urban Space Art Session. Welcome, Qiutong, and the screen is all yours.
Hi. Thank you, Thank you, Bevelyn. Thank you, Gustavo. Nice meeting you all. Thank you for inviting me to DF Talks. I'm very excited to be here and see all the amazing presentations. So let's go to the beginning. Sorry. So today I'll share a bit about our recent work at Fab Union on Metaverse and intelligent fabrication. So a little bit about ourselves. At Fab Union, we usually specialize in technological design, research, development, and practice of digital design and intelligent fabrication. So Fab Union has realized an integrated model for human-machine collaborations, like robotic fabrication, and including design, optimization, and fabrication. So recently, we're exploring methods to bridge the virtual and the real in Metaverse. Keep the volume down a bit. I'd like to start with the quote from Ray Kurzweil. So he said, by 2030, you'll see full immersion shared virtual reality environments or spaces involving all the senses, where we can actually go inside our bodies and brains and tap into the flow of signals coming from our senses. So Web3 connected us into a community-owned virtual world, like Decentraland. But to most people, Metaverse still seems like a game, not a community where we can pop up and like play with friends. So what we're trying to explore is how can we, as architects, bridge between the virtual and the real. So our response to this question is a simple 3-step process: sense, create, and materialize. Today, I'll focus on the process of creation. So in layers of the Metaverse, I think that architects' values are mostly demonstrated in the outer layers: creator economy, community, and the experiences and use cases. So Metaverse seems portrayed as a really important part of the building of this Metaverse environment. I tend to call it the host to experience. So the host pretty much decide how we feel about the Metaverse and how we explore in the world of Metaverse. So during our summer workshops, we led a workshop focusing on Metaverse exhibition space design and experimented the process I just talked about with our fellow students. We selected 2 blockchain-based UGC platforms, Voxels and Decentraland. So why we chose these platforms? Because first, they are user-friendly and relatively easy for users to create your own designs. And secondly, most importantly, they are really on the Metaverse so that people can come on and share your designs and party with worldwide audience. But a very interesting thing that we found is that although the rendering tools and effects are really well developed and advanced, like as you can see in the game Elden Ring on the left, the rendering presentation in Web3 platforms like shown in Voxels are still very ritual, very limited, like what you can see from 20 years before in Minecraft. So really what we're trying to do is to try to suggest using appropriate tools to exceed the existing limitations of our Metaverse platforms. So in this case, we try to achieve a better effects with computational design tools. So like as you can see here, on top this is a manual design by Voxels player. And bottom is one of our experiments using computational design to create the space, which is very different from the first instinct. So we set 2 themes according to the different limitations in Voxels and in Decentraland. So on the left in Voxels, you can see only voxelized models are allowed. So in this case, this is one of the reasons why all the designs seems so ritual in the platform, but at the same time, it is very fast. And like, I don't think there's a limitations on a user numbers. So like everyone can hop on this platform and just and walk around. But in Decentraland, what you can do is a little bit more. So you can see there are like curves, there are like lighting effects. So the students are divided into those two groups and try to explore our designs on the two set of limitations. So students have to work in a certain parcel dimensions, which is relatively small. So like, again, this is another layer of limitations to start with. We develop a technical process to bridge between designs from the design to the platforms. So we try to make it as easy as possible. We suggested to do your form finding in Rhino and Grasshopper, or you can also do it in Maya or in any 3D modeling softwares. And then we do our post-processing in Blender to turn it into like a voxelized model or to reduce mesh so that you can actually put your designs on the platforms. And finally, you apply your special effects in the platforms and really just walk around the space and test how people feel in those platforms. So here is a quick view of the whole process. So just demonstrated with one really common algorithm and how you do your parametric design in Grasshopper in a certain boundary box, and then export it into Blender to apply your special effects and really just to make it appropriate for the platform. So finally, this is how they treated the models in voxels and in Decentraland, which is actually a very fun process because it's just like playing a game in Sims and in Minecraft. But one thing is that what kind of effects you can apply to the exhibition spaces are really determined with by what is available on the platforms. So this is also a thing to think about, that as the platforms develop, there might be some more interesting effects that you can apply to make your space more interesting. So here are some of the methods by our students. They are relatively common algorithms like this minimal surface. And what's interesting is how you use those tools to try to create an interesting design. So like in this case, like at least 3 groups of students try to use Voronoi, but like how you display your design can be very different using the same algorithm. And some of the students just want to make something pretty. So yeah, you can do your designs based on a circulation driven. So here are some of the results from our students, which were very exciting to see. I'll just quickly play the videos. So this design was used as our first design for the first phase of our Metaverse exhibitions. So for the design, it's very interesting to see how in Rhino and in the platforms, they are so different, and just a totally different story as soon as you apply like your main concept, your storytelling, and all the effects in the platform. There is our ending group photo. You're more than welcome to visit the space just by this QR code. And here is Central Land. So this is me and our team chilling in the platform. I really encourage you to hop on the platforms and just hang out with your friends. So this is the other design based on Barnway. Like as you can see in the central line, you can do effects like elevators, lighting, and you can put on some stairs for people to stand on. So here are the exhibition space designs for our Metaverse exhibition for DF 2022. It takes place for until October. So feel free to hop on the space and just have a look around. So back to our process of bridging the virtual and the real. I'd like to share a bit about what we're doing to try to materialize your design from the very virtual metaverse scenes.
Especially the one to create neuromods. So let's head over to the menu.
So
Start,
this is a concept
and this is
of,
where you select your plan.
a product
So
that we're planning.
let's just let's do the
printer.
weapons kit. Now
So
it
what we
will
do
automatically
is
tell you,
in the
okay, you
metaverse
need
scenes, we
3
set
of
out
this
a
and 3
printer,
of that.
and
If you
can
press this
choose,
button, it's going to
the
automatically
material
grab
that you're
everything out of your
recycling
inventory and throw it into these
and
little
through
slots.
an interface in the
If you want,
metaverse,
you can take them
you
out
can
too.
choose
Press and hold the button.
the
It's just gonna
NFT
vacuum
that
them
you
back
want to
up again.
print with a
But let's
certain
put all the stuff
material.
in there.
So I'll play just a preview video. So this is the machine itself in the real world, but also in a metaverse gallery that we're building. So it will be published on 18th of August. And this is the end of my presentation. If you're interested in our work on Metaverse, welcome to discuss with us through email or welcome to check out updates on the website. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Thank you for joining in.
Thank you, Beverly.
Yes, yes. So our last presenter, and last but not the least, Guida is a researcher at Harvard Laboratory for Design Technologies, co-founder of design practice and Architag, and an architect working to synthesize design and technology. His main research interests lie in establishing equitable, collaborative, and participatory design solutions through the use of 2D and 3D machine learning, computation, and immersive mixed reality. He studied at the Architectural Association and Harvard Graduate School of Design and has worked for several years at Foster's and Partners in London, and most recently at the MIT Media Lab. George, welcome to Digital Futures once again, and we look forward to your presentation.
Thanks so much. All right, thanks again for the invite. These presentations have been certainly extremely exciting to see. So today I'm going to be talking about really creative applications of AI and architecture and how these really start blending into the metaverse, which is a space I believe architects should really increasingly lead us within this space as a collaborative endeavor. Now, just a few words about myself. Like many of you, I also come from an architectural background. And in the past few years, I've become increasingly fascinated in how tools are really affecting this culture of architectural production, including extended realities and machine learning in architecture. So with the exponential rate of development of machine learning, I think that now more than ever, it's important for us as architects to combine multidisciplinary and professional knowledge with these new technologies to really create meaningful changes and practical use cases within the metaverse. So for me, this mainly relates to two principal topics. So that's the first one being community building. So in the creation of digital spaces that bring people together, and the creation of collaborative design tools and methodologies, which I'll explain in our workshop for Digital Futures through the use of machine learning in particular. So which in the metaverse, these really span from extended reality, so AR, VR, and XR, so mixed reality, to metaverse worlds, so think Decentraland's Horizons or the spatial or the sunken blimp, which is amazing, to the many Web3 applications. And just to go through a few examples of how I've been exploring these spaces, this is a work project I did almost 2 years ago, which really gamified and digitized the Harvard Graduate School of Design during COVID as an interactive and multimodal educational space. Or Spatial City a while back, which is an immersive social and exhibition space, which was awarded in the Mona Gallery space. Or Self Compass, which really embedded an interactive and immersive mixed reality pavilion, which was used to really reflect on Harvard's and the community's role as it emerged from this post-pandemic era. And Placemaking AI, which is a most recent project, pre-DALI, let's say, still using Pix2Pix or CycleGAN, which use an accessible and participatory machine learning-based user interface to really bridge this gap, which is really a focus of my work between designers or citizens and urban stakeholders or different groups of people. So where does AI in architecture stand in the metaverse? So when looking at these 7 layers of the metaverse, there's a fundamental architectural and social dimension within these layers through each hybrid digital space or experience. This is becoming increasingly immersive and real. So AI in the same way is permeate the same way that it permeates through design practices, acts as a collaborative tool to support this through personalization, inclusion, creation, or augmentation of existing processes. So of greatest interest, as a few projects described today, of most interest is really this idea of content creation or machine learning really acting as a creative partner or collaborator. So this can most clearly be seen in the recent convergence in text-to-image processing into multimodal machine learning models, which have in the last few days, so let's say going from GPT-3 to the recent development and the recent open sourcing of DALI or Midjourney, and how these uses and how this open source culture can really expand through different within the metaverse. So these are other cases which we begin building this framework, a workshop which I developed with Runjie Tian and Donghyun Kim last year, and really enabling these machine learning models from style GAN to computational processes to looking at 3D applications, for example, in 3D GAN. So this workshop provided a framework which we built upon this year in our workshop. So expanding this notion to multimodal process. And we also had Justin Melillo, who's the CEO of Mona, who gave us a talk. So really going from these multimodal processes 2D to 3D workflows, as well as going through the whole pipeline of smart contracts or space minting within Mona and an in-house platform. So how can we bridge from machine learning and reach spaces of interactive metaverse spaces? So what emerged from this process was really exploring a new pipeline, let's say a new methodology, where we're encouraging students to go from the brief, which in our case was specific text relating to New York and the city of the captive globe, and how within this pipeline we can go from different multimodal processes to generate form. So as an example of this, we required students to use the plan as a requirement. And what this did is establish an internal logic, which is applicable even within the later minted metaverse space, which can be interpolated between one another. So through this process of depth map reconstruction, each text or image input can really be materialized into volume, establishing a set of open relations open for interpretation. So these reconstructions can in turn be merged and hybridized with interior and exterior facades through form and texture. And this process of reconstruction therefore provided new spatial metrics to help really refine these text inputs and have discussions about in the digital space where scale, where proportion, or even tradition find new meaning. So each student really generated their own pipeline, their own workflow, applying these to this New York site. And here are just a few examples of how we can actually use these processes to go embed tradition, embed form, embed 3D geometries to really materialize these into more abstract but equally interesting forms or urban digital morphologies. So this is just a summary of our processes, and thanks so much for listening. Look forward to the discussion.
Okay, thank you so much, George. I think this sets a good and an interesting tone for the panel discussion. So let me just first of all invite Neil to say a few words and just give his insight and set up the panel discussion for Matheus and Gustavo to take forward the moderation of this discussion. So Neil, yes.
Thanks, Pavlina. Thank you for these presentations. Actually, really very special day today. I think some very remarkable work on tap, and I think it'll feed into the session we have in 2 weeks' time, which is a Midjourney versus DALL-E, where we've got a really extraordinary. It's going to be more a kind of kucha thing with lots of presentations, but some extraordinary presentations due then. Really remarkable. So I guess, I mean, I'm left thinking in some ways. I just want to kind of throw this out there, and that is a sense that there are a couple of comments that I think really struck me. Apart from the presentations were great, but there are two comments that really struck me. First, I think Matheus was talking about these two doctors and kind of talking how they were sort of teaching in new ways, and I think, you know, and using this space of opportunity, and I just thought that was really pregnant with opportunities, and I just thought, well, that's interesting. I wonder what it's going to lead to. But there's also another comment that Provides made at the very beginning, where she was talking about conferences and things. Well, you know, she was saying, well, we don't have to pay for the, you know, we could do something different now. There's a different form of practice, and we can have all these events happening the whole time, which of course is what we do anyway, Digital Futures, which is, I think, a very interesting thing. And I think, you know, the question that I'm faced with is well, and I have to say, I'm a little nervous about the term metaverse. I mean, I don't want Mark Zuckerberg to tell me what we should be calling this space, first of all. So in any case, it's something that we've been occupying for some time. So, you know, I think it's a little bit, I don't know. I don't think we should necessarily jump in tune with what Mark Zuckerberg says, but there is something that I think is very interesting. And that is to say that I think we're entering a kind of, in a sense, a kind of paradigm shift. By which I mean, I think that the most negative aspect of this is when we simply replicate our kind of material world in this space. I mean, I think it's absolutely absurd that people are buying property in the metaverse. That seems to be completely stupid. But, you know, I think that that nonetheless, there is something new that's emerging, which is that I saw some glimmers of something special coming together in the presentations today. And, you know, I guess what I want to say is that, you know, I'm always reminded when I see this kind of this stuff, the comment that Henry Ford made, where if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. And instead we got a car. And I think we're in that situation now in this space of opportunity. We're not simply replicating our material world. It's pointless carrying on doing the same thing. But there's some other opportunity, which is whatever that might be, which is presenting itself. And I think, especially with the kind of the conjunction of you know, things like Midjourney and DALL-E, whatever else at the moment, which of course is going to go way beyond what we've seen so far in the next few in the last few weeks. So something is happening, and I can't help thinking that this is rippling through every aspect of culture. I mean, I guess, you know, I'm involved in publishing a lot of books, and what's so interesting with all these books AI came out, they're all out of date now because of things that are happening on a day-by-day basis. And really, the space of communication has become something like Instagram now, where, you know, people like Andrew Cudlis is suddenly mushrooming 100,000 sort of followers and things. Things are completely changing, and with this moment of something special, and I think it's really a question of trying to seize that moment and not just simply replicate the existing world, but really explore those possibilities. So I just want to throw that out there as a thought. You know, I think there were some real suggestions in the presentations today of where we could be going in the future, and I think it's going to be something different to where we've been in the past. So let me make that as a provocation to everyone. Thank you.
Yes, so hello, thank you, Leach, for the remarks. And that's something that I've been hearing for you for a couple of years now, and really resonated with me in the beginning, and still does. This idea, if you ask people what they want, they would have said faster horses, right? And we see here, I think one of the nicest thing about this presentation, the most exciting, is how different each of the projects are within the same environment and the same questions, different approaches. And if you ask anyone, the core principle, what Metaverse is about the social aspect, collaboration, right? A Metaverse that has no people, it's not successful, because it's about, you know, inhabiting in that sense, collaborating, creating these platforms. And one thing that we're seeing a lot is how this different research is pushing boundaries in different levels. And if we simply accept the platforms and tools that are available, we fall within the limitations of this world as well, right? The whole exciting portion about the metaverse is this new exploration on breaking the rules of the physical world and exploring within that. The classic example is we don't need gravity in a metaverse space, right? We don't need columns for a structural element. We don't need structure at all. And then there's this dance between what is, you know, enjoyable in a space and, you know, the whole experience, right? If it's a bunch of blobs everywhere and you have no sense of direction, are people going to get lost? Is that the point? Can that be an exploration on its own? But one thing that I wanted to bring attention to is how these tools for exploration, we can really bring together everyone here and share everyone's experience and the sense of collaboration moving forward. I wanted to even speak about what Provides was talking about, you know, the idea of this capturing of environment to create, you know, the cinema and creating all of these tools. We need way less people, etc. I think I'm getting lost in my own thoughts, but I just wanted to mention this whole idea for like collaboration and the different poles within the same subject.
Yeah,
I just wanted to, sorry, Provides. I just wanted to say thank you very much for the presentations. They were extremely inspirational. I've been at this research for a few decades, so it's really humbling to go from a silicon graphics machine and a refrigerator of a lab to now see this kind of come to fruition. I think my questions are just fundamental. I think Provides really kind of grounded a lot of what we're talking about. And Pedro actually mentioned Professor Marcus Novak. And I think the Ola research, there's some kind of deep meaning there when it comes to understanding how to inhabit the space. And George, actually, really, thank you for kind of providing the timelines and figuring out the technology and these bubbles. I wanted to, before Provides starts off, I wanted to figure out what the deep knowledge is that we're discussing. Like, how are we going to change kind of the paradigms and systems that we're acting with? And do architects have mechanisms that we can reimagine a future beyond what we're trapped in? So there's climate change. There's, you know, Achille Mbembe. I'm reading this book called Necro. I think it's Necropolitics. So what are we producing in our economy that is for people instead of for these systems of power and control? So I think that's kind of the framework I'm taking this this panel today.
Thank you so much, Gustavo. Yeah, I actually just wanted to catch the last sentence of Matheus when he was saying that we need less people for every project. You know, there's always this topic coming up is regarding career path. First, it's like, you know, if algorithms take our work, which is the last meaningful question. Second, I think at the last conference, some audience were asking us what would be the market entry job for a metaverse designer. So I guess actually the tools doesn't mean that we would need less people to work on a project, but more like it provides more opportunity for individuals to have the autonomy of working on their own, right? And like what Gustavo was mentioning about the added value that these metaverse technologies are actually bringing to society, I would always say it's not about metaverse market entry job, but how well you actually know social economy, how well you actually know grant challenges, wicked problem. Because if someone hire you for a job, they might hire you for the technical abilities you have. But if you actually want to create your own verse, metaverse, omniverse, whatever verse, then I think you need to find that small problem space. Maybe just if you're working in the construction industry, they wanted to do the digital twin, then a small problem space is how do a construction worker without digital skills can actually master a very simple piece of off-the-shelf devices, pairing that with very simple data transferring sort of workflow. So I think we have to understand the industry ourselves as an industry very well, understand what people are facing as a challenge every day in design practice, and then we fit metaverse tools in, because a lot of people knows how to do algorithm. Actually, not many people know who we are as an industry. So I think that's the major challenge here. Oh, sorry, one last thing. I also wanted to thank Digital Future. When we were doing the roundtable VR, we were very inspired by an email that was sent to us, a promotional email by Digital Future that's saying that they're going to establish a global classroom. And so we thought we will call it a global classroom 3D for our VR event. Yeah, so thank you so much.
Maybe I could just respond to that, Provides. I mean, so let me just declare something. When I first started writing about AI, I was always caught between the fact it was both so amazing and so terrifying, right? And I eventually persuaded my publishers that I wanted to do sort of one book, do two books, one about how amazing it was with a white cover, which has already come out, and one with a black cover, which is about how the dark side of AI, which is to say and the title of that's going to be The Death of the Architect, which is a bit troubling in some senses, but it's more in a way a wake-up call in the sense to what I'm saying. And I initially thought, well, I want to push that off until I've written some more positive books about AI. But suddenly, with the advent of DALL-E and Midjourney, we're seeing that something incredibly creative coming out there that is challenging us in some ways. And I think that's what we need to do. But I think, in a sense, if we are creative as individuals, I think we've got to apply that creativity, not to designing buildings, but to imagining to designing our profession or our way of operating. And this is what I think I've seen through the sunken blimp. I've seen it through blessed architecture, what it's called, all these new things, that actually there are new ways of operating, and it goes both to the educational side of things, and the global platform thing was something that my idea, the idea of a doctoral consortium thing. But, you know, I think we've got to really apply ourselves to thinking, what is the future? Because if we stay just carrying on, driving, riding horses and so on, that's what's going to happen, right? I mean, if you think about what happened to horses when cars were invented, they all got out of work, became obsolete. So we've got to sort of adapt to survive and imaginatively seize these opportunities to explore what we can do in this kind of new domain. Yeah.
Well, let me spice this up a little bit. So I think Provide spoke. So how about George? What do you think about these things? Like, why is it important for us to think beyond the technology? Do we need to code now, or should we figure out philosophy and look at deep mathematics as architects in our curriculum to make profound change in our profession? What do you think?
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think it's so much is happening so fast, and I definitely agree with Neil that we're almost trying to keep up with the discourse and the ethics behind it. And what really comes to mind is really what's emerging for me is this democratization of creativity. So we're really going through a phase in which this acquisition time of skill and knowledge is really being diminished to a shorter and shorter period. And we see this through AI, we see this through the metaverse. And I think that combining that with the collaborative participatory design processes really will bring positive change.
Anyone else want to chime in? Ola Research, I know that you guys invited me to your crit, and there was such great work, but there were also deep questions. Can you please talk about what deep questions you're asking and your motivations of being in this space?
Yes, one of the things that we kind of look to, let's say, unearth or understand is using kind of AI, which what George just said, it kind of compresses domain knowledge in a way that pretty much anybody can access now to the point. And it seems like tech companies or even just startups are pushing this way where with just a text, you can generate a whole bunch of things, right? And that's fascinating because it opens up access to a lot of people. And at this point, we have seen how I guess anybody can just kind of input something and get a very interesting image out. So that aspect is interesting. And if you kind of speculate a little bit into the future, and then when that becomes 3D content generation, it's going to be fascinating what kind of outputs start coming out of that. So one of the things that we've been looking at least from the research into digital worlds and stuff like that is one of the things when we first started kind of getting involved in this is we can design whatever we want, but there's the aspect of immersive experience, and that includes all the senses. And that was kind of the part that we realized that what makes us human, or what we kind of do when we experience a space in the real world and we want to bring it into the physical and have this connection, it's we have to activate all the senses. And that's what's still, even with all this amazing technology, the VR goggles, we still have to input stimulus that impacts our senses. So I think that's something that we really have to focus on and understand how that works. And if once companies start figuring out how this works, and I think Matheus said it, his process of collecting data from the sunken blimp, you can now analyze user behavior through these platforms. And to some degree, once we tap into those senses and how we collect computer vision or audio, we can then take that and manipulate users, kind of how we do with digital media and algorithms, and push them into different ways. So that therefore commoditizing the senses. And that's what's one aspect that we're kind of looking into, and how we can either make our own way through that and work with it. So it provides not Like, so we don't like kind of influence users, but we kind of like push them into like explore new creative experiences.
Yeah, I want to add something to that. I think that an important point for we as architects is the education realm, because within the education and the base that we have at a university, at least when I was at a university, everything was like model making and physical model making, and we didn't have laser cut, nothing, anything like that. And technology moves very quickly. And right now, as educators, because we are also educators with the workshops and also at a university, we know that it's impossible for the new architects to not know these things, because the world is changing very quickly and they need to have all the tools that they can, so they can understand this shift, because in our journey as architects, we need to be very versatile and multidisciplinary, so we can really adapt, as George was telling, like using different things. And I think that that's part of our motivation as OLA and as individuals, also to try to share our knowledge to the new generations.
Yes, but I think something that's happening now with the metaverse is that as designers, we're going too fast. I think we have to have like 3 different scenarios. The first one is the real world, which is here. And we have the metaverse, which is here in this side. But what's happening in between? I think as designers, we are trying to propose different geometries, different experience, colors. As Matthew said, we don't have structures, gravity. And I think as a designers, we're going too fast, because the people, the users needs to get familiar in a slow process. I am afraid that the metaverse and these social spaces cannot work in the future because we're going too fast. So that's my perception. I think because I notice sometimes when you have a space that it has like regular rooms, the people goes more often, because they are trying to mimic the real world, because they get familiar with how the experience is, how they walk around the space, how they can explore it. But when you propose something that is great cavities, like caves, like planets, different worlds, it becomes like a kind of a game. And sometimes the people is not a gamer. They're interested in exhibitions, they're interested in different other experience. And I think as a designers, we are going too fast, and we have to think about the transition between the real world and the metaverse.
So Jose, one thing before Matheus, before you chime in, one thing that I learned, I ride motorcycles, and I know some people surf and some people do sports. So when you ride a motorcycle, you actually have to be the fastest object around you, because you can be killed. So what you look for before there's an accident is you look for a way to survive. You know you're going to fall and you know you're going to get hurt, but you want to live. And it seems like that's been my motto for a long time. And when I hear, architects need to slow down, I'm like, really? A lot of the industry is already suffocating us as thinkers. And if we're going to, the promise that I understand of architects is to imagine a new paradigm, an understanding of the world, then I really don't know if you call it too fast or too slow. But I think we should always push and challenge power. And I think that's what we're doing by making all these beautiful images and expressions. But Matheus, before anything, after your question, I had a question too, but Matheus, please go forth.
Yeah, of course. I just wanted to mention something. I don't think I agree with the argument that we're going too fast. And I actually think the speed of this, or the exploration of that, is actually the powerful thing about this metaverse. If you think about phenomenology, the whole idea that we inform the environment, environment informs us, there's this conversation between, and we both take something from each other, humans and the environment. And what the problem is, we see how the world is progressing. Society as a whole is like changing faster and faster by each generation. And the environments that we have today in the physical world, they take time. We all know construction industry, architecture itself. it takes a time to evolve and all. The potential within these metaverse spaces is this constant change, this constant like shooting in all directions where people start falling into places. It doesn't mean that all spaces are going to survive, but then society as a whole start finding what resonates, and it increased the speed through which people and environment modifies each other. And I think even going back to Gustavo's main question, how is this going to help society evolve? I truly believe having environments that can be modified at the speed at which society is changing, preferences changing, cultural values, that is a very powerful tool. And I highly recommend, if anyone has joined VR chat, right? It's available, it's free. You can, even if you don't have a VR headset, you can experience. There are thousands of rooms, thousands, and hundreds of thousands of people everywhere. And people, they start a conversation somewhere and they don't like it. They quickly open a portal, they bring people that they're in until they find their favorite places. And then they start making homes there and then having conversations, joining. If the conversation they're having become more serious, like, oh, let's hop somewhere else where it's more private. And suddenly you have this environment that is unlimited in potential, literally. And I think the speed is actually what we need, in this exploratory phase until we understand. And on the other side of it, right, the idea of preferences. If I, for some reason, throw up every time I see the color green, right, and I go into this museum space that is entirely green, I don't like that space, but I cannot ask people to paint the museum, but now in a virtual space, personal preferences are adjustable. Imagine that now we're creating these environments and the architects now have the role of deciding the infrastructure, the system, how metaverse spaces work. Now imagine that my preferences, I am sensitive to light, strobe light, a lot of people are. Now I can toggle something off, or my preferences become part of this space, and everyone can have different experiences based on their own personality. And I truly think this flexibility of space, as well as the different options you can take, is one of the main things of how we were going to evolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Matheus. I'm also very impressed with your work. I was there during your review in Neil's jury, so I just wanted to say thank you. Provides, if you don't mind asking your question, because I think it's very relevant, please feel free as a panel to ask each other questions. I want to hear more about the exhibition space that was created for Digital Futures, but also just this space of work. So Provides, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for great moderation. I actually have a question for George, because I think we're working on very similar areas. But before that, actually, Matheus inspired me to say something. I don't want to distract the topic of metaverse, but I think what he was saying just now is actually really related to DAO. Because the ability for actually individuals to split into their own community anytime they are, anytime their interest doesn't form consensus, is actually written in the original white paper of DAO, that the security mechanism of protecting minorities being robbed by majority is actually through the autonomy of splitting into your own chain. But at the same time, for me, this is sort of like a very simplified way of ensuring autonomy, because imagine if you have a real physical construction project, a co-housing, let's say, every time someone doesn't form consensus, they split into their own building. Is that even possible? Like theoretically, philosophically, it's ideal. It's like metabolism of cell. It just keep reproducing itself. But actually, once we encounter physicality, we realize that consensus is needed. So I think that's also related to the question I was going to ask about participatory design, right? It's all about finding the boundaries of conflicting values and then synthesizing them. So I was going to ask George, the greatest challenge that I'm also facing right now is how does the design and citizens' opinion that I've collected trigger real changes in design implementation? A co-housing project is easy, right? You just design together and build. But for instance, in Hong Kong, 500 household, we don't even know who the people are before we start before we complete the building. So yeah, there's a real challenge there. I'm just really curious what you think on it.
Yeah, thanks so much for the question. I think there's a real value in using these technologies and using participatory design, especially in my case with machine learning. So how can the tools really empower users? And I guess it all falls under like an umbrella of like crowdsourcing, or really using tools to help, the common citizen through the mediator of the designer or the architect to make decisions or to bridge these gaps with, in your case, maybe urban stakeholders. So I gave an example that a project that I've been developing. So we use GAN technologies to kind of reimagine the urban, let's say, empower users or common citizens to reimagine their streets. So imagine like a street full of cars or a street with a poor design, which isn't pedestrian friendly, commercial activities. So how can you use GAN or today DALI or Midjourney? How can you, with a simple click, reimagine that street? And I think this idea of, you know, previously we were in a mode in which an image was worth 1,000 words, but that didn't go far enough. And now an image is worth 1,000 words. A text is worth 1,000 images with DALI, which is really, really interesting. So how can images in these cases really express values through the architect or empower them? Thanks for the question. Maybe I'll counterbalance, and how have you found this experience, and what have you used, what methods have you used to, let's say, bridge this barrier?
I don't want to take over the screen time, and also want to throw some question at BEGÜM and maybe Vicky as well. But I guess it's because Hong Kong is so high density. The only thing I realized to do, it's also through local organizations. That's almost the only way to do it. Even if I wanted to invite residents, housing residents to come and participate, and they wouldn't trust you if you're just a random girl on the street asking them to participate in something. You have to find the organization or the leader within a community. But the most difficult part is actually to have the result, show them maybe to public actors also, and also to developers, and actually persuading them that there is some value in the opinion and it's implementable and feasible. Because if you just randomly ask them, what do you want on the street? And they tell you, I want a karaoke room. But, you know, there's actually not much value in that particular opinion, right? Even though they might really want it. So I guess, yeah, that's just but maybe also BEGÜM and Vicky, they wanted to jump in and say something.
Yes. I might just add a bit about DAO. So what I think really valuable about Web3 is that there are many groups of community. So it's a totally distributed system where in the future, everybody can have a say, not only architects. So I really like to say a sentence that in the Metaverse era, every one of us is a creator. So probably in the future, architects might not only be architects, there might be something else. And people like engineers, like, I don't know, just housewives or just like anyone, they can have a say of what they want in the future scenes. So I think the creation of tools like Midjourney and DALL-E and like softwares and hardwares, they provide a certain technology for people, for everyone to create something and to build the environment without having to like learn a whole degree of architecture and like really just have the availability to express your ideas in the metaverse. So I think that's a very nice thing about having those tools in the Web3. What we really try to do is to create some of these tools. So like, for example, we can create like a customization interface for people to select what you want in your house or in your exhibition space in the metaverse. And just a really simple process for beginners to actually contribute in this community to build a future world. So also, Matheus, I might add you on VR chat. I'm pretty sure I've heard your voice somewhere in VR chat. It's a really nice community, and I really appreciate the sense of community in platforms like VR chats, like in Voxels, Decentraland, and much more. So one prediction about the future is that Metaverse might not just be one individual Metaverse. It might develop into Omniverse, where the individual Metaverse, like individual platforms, might have some kind of bridge where you can jump between, like from VR chat, you go into a portal and you might jump into Voxels, or you might jump into somebody's house in Decentraland or something. I think that's a really beautiful direction of future environments. So,
well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful vision. I think that we at Digital Futures want to make it very accessible for everyone on our platform to really just dream and make the future now. I know that I know that Zeynep is also here joining us from our team. I wanted to hear her thoughts. And anyone else that hasn't spoken yet, because I think it's really good just to hear where we are. I think I'm calling out Pedro as well, but Zeynep, do you have any questions or thoughts or comments?
Yeah, thank you. I'm from much more theory side, and I just published my thesis from space to junk space. So I have one question to George. So I would like to more from placemaking in AI in terms of the concepts of space, place, non-place, or even maybe intelligent junk space. Can we elaborate digital placemaking to the metaverse, or as mentioned in the chat, maybe personalization of the space can bring the equality to the space, or even maybe to the concept of place. Sorry for using so much concepts as from my theoretical background and all the readings, but I am curious about how we can broad place, or like place attachment, place satisfaction through metaverse and as a test medium. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Yeah, I really think the theory behind all these projects is crucial. And for that one specifically, we're using Norbert Schulz's concept of genius loci. So it's really the essence, the qualities of space that really matter. And when applying this genius loci to a metaverse, it's, we ask what will that look like, and what's the value of scale, what's the value of texture, what's the value of the wall. Like these, or style, which is a huge topic. So I think finding a balance between not going too far where people can't connect or make associations to, let's say, their immediate reality, but far enough for it not to be a replacement is really critical.
Thank you.
I haven't heard from Giovanna, by the way. So Giovanna, do you have any thoughts? Giovanna is not only an esteemed colleague, but she's extremely talented, and she really pushes where we are thinking about digital futures going. So Giovanna, do you have any words?
Yeah, I think that we continue being humans, and if Metaverse continue, development with AI, with other new technologies, I think that the Metaverse is only a space for show others how the other technologies are developing so quickly. But like we're continue being humans, our focus is continue being experience and continue thinking in a user experience. And at this point, we can think in emotions, we can think in memories, unlike our workshop that we taught in Digital Futures, that was a perception and memory for the digital architecture. And yes, you taught a lot of interoperability, and we can use, or we can make better the interoperability between softwares and between platforms, because at the moment there are a lot of different platforms for Metaverse. And finally, what's the Metaverse? Who is working the Metaverse? There are different ways to connect into the metaverse. But the real maybe answer for why we are trying to connect with others is because we continue being humans. We continue thinking in big motivation. We continue thinking in look new things. And I don't know if it's because we are creators. I think that, for example, my nephew, some years before was testing the VR glasses, the headset VR, and it's amazing how they explore and are learning about how the virtual environment is working at the same time that the real life. And I don't know, I'm thinking a lot in how we can make more make these environments better, not only for us, maybe thinking in the future generation, because we are working a lot for the future generation. And I don't know, maybe the metaverse is not only to show or look more texture or look more forms. I really like the new forms, but I think that is more like show new experience, go out of the world, being living into the world, living into an unlimited space by feeling that we are free, freedom in conclusion. Yeah.
Thank you, Giovanna. I wanted to invite Pedro because I haven't heard Pedro. He had some thoughts about some individuals that inspired him. I also wanted to bring to your attention that I added some information from Professor Novak of the Trans Lab at UCSB, and he invites all of you to join his discussion in world making and transvergence and his many decades of writing on cyberspace and virtual reality. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. But Pedro, can you comment about what we're doing here? What's going on? Should we be scared or excited?
In the way how Metaverse is going right now, I'm quite a bit scared, to be honest. I want to be quite a bit provocative in that sense, because I always been wondering how democratic Metaverse is, in the way that all the experiments I've seen around Metaverse implies that the people who wants to explore this Metaverse needs to invest money. What I mean with that is there are several metaverses in where we can explore them, we can experience them for free, but there are tons of them that doesn't. The problem that I found on this is that we are replicating whatever is happening in the real world. That I mean, what we are creating here, I think, is that the ones who have the more access to digital tools has more power. So my question is that the way we need to go? So at the end, what's the idea of Metaverse? We want to create a democratic society through the Metaverse. That's a question. That's one of the questions that I have. Then later, another question that I have that I haven't answered yet is that when we talk about Metaverse, are we talking about a 3-dimensional space? Are we talking about virtual models? Do we really need virtual models to interact each other? I found several platforms that doesn't require physical or digital models to interact with each other. Of course, at the end, the question is, I completely agree in that Metaverse, it's more about economy and interaction. I totally agree with that. So, but the question is, do we need physical or digital spaces to interact? Does the economy needs physical or digital spaces to work? That's a question that I have, because to be honest, I refuse to think that Metaverse it's equals to space or digital space at all. So if we think to the future, I don't think and that's a personal thought, I don't think that metaverse will be equal to digital world. I think there is something more than that, to be honest. But I don't know the answer yet.
All right, so you heard that. Pedro is saying something that's very provocative, and I want to say a lot of things, but Provides, why don't you go ahead? And Matthias, you've been a little quiet, so after Provides, why don't you chime in?
Yeah, I'm also very provoked by Pedro's comment, because I think it's very, very relevant. That's the thing that we're not seeing. For instance, we always talk about metaverse as if it's a universal concept and there's some sort of universality in it. But we also know that universality and evolutionary thinking in social cultural perspective is also what led to colonization. You know, we think that everyone is the same. We all should evolve along a linear pathway, and that's how we can be civilized. So, you know, I think we should always be careful that we're not applying soft cultural powers in this digital space as well. And also, what is democratic? Because, you know, in Greek definition, demo is people, so it's like people power, it's people's nomos, but it's also coming from, you know, a Greek tradition. So how can we actually articulate that to different cultural geographies? Or are we saying that particular static optimal should be adapted by everyone in the world? You know, that's a topic much better, larger than just metaverse itself, right? It's geopolitics, it's everything inside. So if we're saying we're doing participatory stuff involving everyone globally to actually join in, communicate, discuss, generating shared cultural expression, are we paying enough attention to digital inclusivity, digital literacy? When I'm actually engaging real people, I realize how difficult to try and help them to understand WASD, right? It took me, I think, 30 minutes to help them to just navigate WASD with left hand while penning with the right hand. So sometimes as architects, we're sort of putting our head on the ground, thinking we are inclusive, but while we're not engaging real people, and we never realize how inclusive or not inclusive it really is. So I think we should really, start talking about that very soon.
Before we move on to Matthias, Professor Novak had a provocative thing to say. Do we need architecture to interact? I think that's something to really think through. Matthias.
So I'll first answer no to that, but I'll actually pull that thread in a little bit. I think that what Provides was talking about inclusivity is super important. But I also believe that there's a gap right now because of generational differences. Like these are all things that are coming up very recently. But I have, for example, a 2.5-year-old nephew who works the iPad better than I can, you know? And I can attest that when he is my age, he will be using tools that right now we are using, thinking that's like Pac-Man for us, right? As we progress, you know, this inclusivity is gonna, I think, fill the gaps, at least for some part of it. Of course, future questions are going to come. But one thing that I wanted to mention about the role of architecture in that sense, and as well as something that Professor Novak mentioned, which is that the past is not dead weight, right? We have to deal with the past and really figure out what we're pushing against in order to go forward. That was something very interesting that made me think a lot. And one thing that we are facing right now, especially with new generations and the potential within the metaverse, or metaverses, you know, multiple, etc., is the idea of identity, right? We see that all the time. People want to express themselves, the idea of culture. And when we're talking about inclusivity, you know, perhaps the technological part of accessing that, yes, that's not inclusive yet. But when we're talking about branding yourself, right? The shoes that you like to wear, the clothes that you feel like it fits your personality, all of those things. Historically, if you have a clothing manufacturer, it takes time for you to be a designer, have a manufacturer that provides clothes. Now, anyone can design the hoodie or the outfit that they wish without a manufacturer, and people can resonate with that and hold on that identity and be the person they truly believe. And that goes for scale. Even using VR chat again, you can be a tiny little person that explores the world as a huge universe, or you can be a huge monster that you cannot even fit in the space, right? The idea of identity now, has unlimited possibilities. And when we talk about architecture, if you make the argument that a house is just another wearable for you to live in, or another feature where you store your things, where you have safety, where you have privacy, in the end, it's another tool of identity that we can use in order to, be who you are. You can, and within the metaverse, we're talking about rules that you cannot put your apartment in your pocket and go grocery shopping. But imagine like you can put your house in your pocket instead of having the quote unquote bags in games, that you see all the items you own. You can pull up your apartment mid grocery store and like you're in your space, you're private. You can quickly go back and forth, and that becomes another identity. So that's what I see a lot of the metaverse architecture resonating with people in that sense.
Before we move on to Jennifer's question, I think I've had a wonderful time today, and it's been very exciting, and I think we need to continue this dialogue. I want to start going into the wrap-up stage. So from each one of you that are present, if you can please give me some final thoughts, or what what would be good to read or think through where we are in the world. This is an architectural platform, but this is a platform for those that care about architecture, love architecture, and want to evolve, I believe. And I believe in an inclusive world, and I think that we need to fight for it, like everything else, like happiness and joy. But anyway, so Jennifer, do you have any closing thoughts?
Oh yeah, I wanted to talk about the decentralization, because when we create a power of data, the project got a lot of media attention here in Peru, because when you create an architecture project, like a physical project, you need to be, at least in Peru, in Lima to see the new project, because Lima is the capital and everything is like centralized here. But when you are talking about metaverse and immersive platforms, you don't have that issue. You can be in China, you can be in the USA, and you can enter a project that can be developed in a different place in the world. And at least here in our country was something very unique, because people from other parts of Peru itself, like from the north, from the south, from the west, and they can enter to the project. And I think that that's an important part of the metaverse, that type of inclusive approach. I know that maybe it's not the inclusive that we're thinking about, okay, architects, we're trying to be inclusive with everything, but I truly agree with what Matheus was saying. I have a nephew too, he's like the same as Matheus is like describing. They are going to be better than us. They already are in Minecraft doing their own like communities, their own gaming things, and they can call themselves creators. I have a talk with a teacher when I was in Spain last month, and she was talking to me that if I thought that everyone is going to be a creator, and I was thinking, yes, because right now everyone is a creator, everyone can be. That's because I was like agreeing also with Vicky and what she was saying. And I think that as architects, maybe our ego before was like, we are the only ones that can develop things. We're the only ones that can create things. But right now the world is shifting, and we are not the only ones. We are part of a big generation of people that can do the same. Maybe not with the same approach, because we have an educational background and we have some thoughts before, but as everything is changing, and we are going to change a lot too, as a profession, at least for trying to be in this digital realm. And also my last thought is that the metaverse itself is like a very broad world. We don't have the metaverse of metaverses, because right now we have platforms they are isolated and you cannot have the interoperability between them. And I think that that's a key point for what we are going to see in the future. If we are going to have one that can contain them all, it's going to be a total game changer, because right now that's a point that we don't have and that we lack of, because we're trying to connect, I don't know, spatial to Decentraland and Decentraland to voxels, but you can't with a portal, as Vicky was saying. But if in the future we can, I have a lot of questions of what is going to happen. And I'm totally excited as an architect and also as a user of the metaverse to see what is going to happen with that spaces. We truly don't need architecture, or we need, because if I don't have architecture, at least for me in my own thoughts, I am very curious and I don't have architecture or something that contains me or gave me something else, and maybe only a black or white space, I'm going to get bored. I can talk a lot with people in the space, but then I'm going to get bored very easily. And Dio is smiling because she knows me very well. So yeah, I think that's my last thoughts with this.
While the chat is basically taking off, please don't give up as being an architect. Yeah, please, none of you guys, please don't do that. Yeah, we're here to do, we're here to be the point of the spear, to hopefully to create a new era and how we inhabit and embody data and space and information. So I would invite Pedro. Pedro, what are your final thoughts? Since you're the provocateur here, and I know that you're, you want to say something, what should we be thinking about, or what should we leave with today?
I really agree with the idea of Jose Luis Vintimilla. He mentioned about the world of the physical, the world of the digital, and what's happening in the middle. I don't know if we may say a hybrid world, but I'm really curious about what's happening there, because that's the only way to be sure that we are really integrating what's happening in the physical and in the digital. So there are tons of questions I cannot answer yet, but I would really think about more how we democratize what we consider the digital world. That's everything I would say for now.
Well, thank you very much. George, do you want to say something? I know that you're, I didn't ask the question, but when you presented the bubble diagrams, I kept thinking, what is above your paradigms of understanding where we are? I mean, there's science, there's time, there's philosophy, there's different notions, but please give us some wisdom here that we can go forth and be inspired.
Yeah, thanks for the question. I think, I think science and technology is definitely a great place to start, especially philosophy. But I think it's interesting to note, maybe reference a quote, and it's more from McLuhan. It's in saying that we shape our tools, and therefore our tools shape us. And it's quite critical, especially in redefining the space, which is currently being developed so fast. And I just want to reiterate, I want to add and complement the past comments in saying that, it's our role really to define the space as participatory, as collaborative, as inclusive, and especially as these really develop through different use cases, which are extremely limited today. And it's going to blow up in the next few years through education, workplace, or, medical practices. But I think the use cases are really at the beginning. And I think staying as architects, as the leaders of this collaborative process will be critical. But thanks so much.
George brings up a good point. Things are moving fast, but I'm just curious. Every time I look at a movie on science fiction, I go, is that really what you think about space? Is that really how we imagine the future? I think that what I've seen in some of the work that we've produced here in these workshops, but also in your work, it does challenge how we see narrative and how we see imagery in the media. Do you want to say something that gets us to the next place?
Don't give up being an architect. I know. I mean, I end up here being in this panel and doing everything that I've been doing. It's because I used to be a really bad student, and I'm also not very good at working in a firm, and I couldn't find a path. And then that's why I went to digital, because I was a complete tabula rasa, and that enabled me to just absorb these things that sounds crazy. So there's no perfect job. Like even a metaverse designer wouldn't be perfect. So I think there's so much value in the field of architecture and construction industry of actually reaching to people, providing basic quality of life. Like, just don't give that up. And also, I'm just really happy to see very familiar faces. And I think Digital Future is like a family, very welcoming. Yeah. But there's just a lot of Midjourney updates in a Discord channel recently. So yes, very active group of people. And since George also ended with a quote, I will also end with a quote. Someone from China, Zhu Xi, basically he says from, I don't know, 1,000 years ago that 温渠拿得清如许，唯有源头活水来. He's asking why is the pond so clear? Is because there is a living source of water. So I think even 1,000 years ago, he already recognized open sourcing for a clear mind that can reflect what's happening at the time. And no matter if it's Metaverse or some other technology in the future, that's the sort of spirit that we should, hang on to. So thank you so much, Digital Future, and everyone. Great work.
Well, Neil is joining us. So Neil, what do you have to say?
No, I just wanted to echo what's been said so far. I mean, I think that what we're trying to do is to democratize space by opening up the space of exchange, which I think is sort of working in a way. I just want to maybe sort of just throw something out there, which I thought was in Matheus's presentation and maybe got kind of lost somewhere. And that is to say, I mean, and I also want to pull George's leg. I mean, please, no more of this Christian Notebook short stuff, genius loci. I really find that's an obsolete past that I've hopefully left behind. But what I do want to suggest in terms of a kind of theoretical insights is I think the new agenda, which is kind of super fascinating. We had a series on last semester with as part of the doctoral consortium the FIUD does, looking at AI neuroscience and architecture. And there's something in there that I really wanted to leave you with, and that is a thought that Jeff Hawkins has, who's one of the greatest minds alive and talking about 1,000 brains and whatever, And he basically takes the view that we have a model of the world inside our minds. We have a model of the world inside our minds, which is fascinating. And that's how we operate. We actually operate through that sort of model, which begins to suggest that maybe the metaverse model of whatever that is and what's inside our mind have got something more in common than we need to think. And I also think that we need to take on board some of those kind of like seemingly outrageous thoughts coming in from neuroscience, people like Anil Seth, who talk about how we hallucinate our reality. There's no such thing as reality. There's no such thing as a color. We interpret it in some ways, and we hallucinate. Our view of reality is a controlled hallucination, which sounds very much like the kind of machine hallucinations that we were talking about in the AD on AI and architecture. So I think there's a whole new territory of theory out there that needs to be explored and negotiated. I just want to sort of finally finish off by responding to provides, and that says, no, don't give up being an architect, but reinvent being an architect. What is it to be an architect? And because whatever it was, things are changing very quickly, and it's speeding up because of Moore's law. It's going to change rapidly. And we've got to survive. We've got to adapt. Otherwise, we'll become like dinosaurs. So anyway, thank you for this fantastic session today. Really insightful thoughts. I think to be continued for sure. It's really a great session. And thank you also to Baveline and Gustavo and the team behind putting this together. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Before we end the session, is there anyone that's has something that they want to say that's coming out of their chest, because I try to hit everyone that I could see on my screen, but are we okay today? Because I want to do this again, but I don't know when. But
I think next time we should do it in a virtual space. I think it's only natural.
Yeah, in VR.
We have the same conversation there. Yeah. The Sun Kumblum stage is open doors, guys. You're invited whenever.
I think we should probably take that open invitation for sure. I really enjoy it. I think before we end the session, Professor Marcos Novak wanted me to share something. The point what is the point here? Architecture that exceeds need, music exceeds need, art exceeds needs, poetry exceeds coarse communication. It is powerful and concise and memorable and rare. The metaverse as architecture must exceed communication. So that's his quote. He has an open invitation. We invite you always. Thank you for the inspiration. And I think Baveline, take it away.
Yes. I think, yes, thank you everyone for joining in. I understand that Vicky and Provides and everyone, it's quite late also for you guys, but yeah, thank you for being around. And We'll probably see you for the Metaverse part 2 of this discussion. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you, Emma.